All right, welcome back, guys, to another video. For today, based on just how we've been recording some of these other videos, again, the whole theme of these is going to be fitness and health related, kind of giving you guys a bit of insight on what my experience is like now that I've been doing this for a couple of years, telling you guys what's worked and what hasn't worked. So, because we're going to be keeping it in that theme with these videos, and because we've already talked a decent amount about the gym, in other words, like how to go about your training plan, we've talked about how to start getting into the gym if you're just, going into it for the first time, especially after this new year. I think now it's probably time to talk about another aspect of it. I believe I mentioned this in one of the other videos, but if I haven't, when it comes to training and, just improving yourself physically and also mentally, even, we talk about actually what that looks like in terms of you going into the gym and doing what you have to do, but there's a couple of other things that we have really yet to talk about too much that also play a pretty big role into your overall growth when it comes to the gym. And those other things being your nutrition, your sleep, your stress levels. These are just some of the main things that also play a major part in how you're going to be performing and how you're going to be growing as an individual. And like I said, we haven't talked about any of those other areas as of yet, but I feel like right now it would be good to share with you all a bit of my experience in some of those areas, in particular, the nutrition part. I'm by no means a nutritionist, dietitian, you know what I'm saying, any sort of professional in that regard. I just, again, know what works for me, and if you're able to get something out of it, that's great. But when it comes down to nutrition and really your diet, that was something that I always had trouble with growing up. In some of my other videos, if you don't recall, I talked about how a big issue that I had my entire life previously was always being overweight. I was always the fatter kid growing up. And so for me, it was never so much like trying to build up my appetite or trying to, eat in a caloric surplus. That was never an issue for me. And I understand that alongside some other, I guess, problems, those are things that other people have. But I'm going to be sharing to you what issues I had, how I got over those. And I feel like the fundamental, I guess, message behind those can still apply even if you don't have that same problem. So, and I'll get to what I mean by that when I kind of finish wrapping up, like what worked for me to lose weight or to just lean out a lot more. Um, but I guess to start off, so I'm not going to take too much time giving you a backstory because I've talked about this a decent amount in some of my previous videos. So if you haven't seen those, definitely check those out. But just to give you a quick summary, so up until I was around like 18-ish, I always fluctuated with weight, but I was always on the heavier side. I always knew I wanted to get skinnier or leaner, but I never knew of an effective way to how to do that. Every single thing that I tried always ended up failing, and I understand that why that happened now. It was purely because I would always go to this extreme ends of dieting. I would always essentially starve myself, and it would not be something that would be sustainable for me. I would quit very, very soon, right? So long story short, that's really what happened up until I started training and got more knowledgeable on nutrition, how to properly track your macros, things of that sort. And I realized how to find a solution for me. Right now, and typically, this is usually always how it goes. I never tend to get too heavy or too lean. I tend to stay around the same weight, but just because that's what works best for me. I'm still able to achieve the goals that I want to doing that, and I don't have to worry so much about like, how I physically look. I like to look a certain way, so I tend to stay around that same weight, and that's just what works for me. And I feel like for a lot of people, that's probably how they want to, deal with that as well. They don't want to go ahead and go, be super fat, super skinny, and then having to constantly go through that cycle, right? So right now, I feel like I'm at a good equilibrium, but it took a long time for me to get to this point. And I'm going to share with you what I did to essentially help me get there in terms of nutrition. So, like I said, that was the issue for me. Always was on the heavier side, but tried to find ways to lean down, and I never found anything that worked for me until I started learning about a few methods online that really helped me out. Now, when it comes down to nutrition, this again, I'm not a professional or an expert, but in my opinion, for the majority of people, I really don't believe that going into one of those extreme diets will work for the majority of people. Things like, I don't know, like if you've heard of the carnivore diet, or if you decide to eliminate carbs, or some whatever diet that you might find that completely eliminates something or restricts you in a very exaggerated way, I really don't think that is something that is going to work for the majority of people. Notice how I said the majority. If that works for you, that's great. But generally, I don't feel like that's going to the work for the majority. The reason being is because what worked for me and what I ended up finding out is when it came down to losing weight, what was the most effective for me was keeping my diet relatively the same as to what it was, but just making healthier choices. What do I mean by that? Can't get over the fact that I like certain foods. I like pizza, I like tacos, I like hamburgers. These are all foods that I still do like and I've always enjoyed. And I realize that that enjoyment isn't going to go away. And the reason why I always failed my previous diets was because I always eliminated or went to an extreme end of changing something about that diet when I feel like that shouldn't be the case. This process should be enjoyable for you. If you're trying to lose weight or gain weight, it shouldn't be a struggle. So you need to find out what works for you. And again, for me, I just realized that I just need to swap out and make healthier options for the foods that I already do like. Maybe options that are lower in calories so that I can still be in a caloric deficit. Right. And it wasn't until I realized that I started making progress. Once I realized that, I was making lots and lots of progress, and the process of losing weight went way more smoothly because it didn't even feel like I was in a diet. Before, when I would always do things that would fail, I would either restrict myself of foods, starve myself, or eat like salads or try to eat salads 24/7. And I personally do not like that. So I would always go to methods that were not sustainable for me. But if you're able to find a method that is sustainable for you, you're more than likely obviously going to stick with it and you're actually going to lose the weight, right? Or gain the weight or whatever the goal is. So that's my biggest tip for anyone is when you're trying to, start this journey of whatever fitness goal you might have, nutrition and your diet is going to play a major role into it. And depending on what your goal is, you should be looking at finding some sort of diet that works for you that is going to help you achieve your goals. Again, that can be different whether you're trying to lose weight, gain weight, or whatever. So, things that worked for me, right? And what do I mean by making switches or healthier food choices? Well, I'll give you an example. So instead of maybe eating a dish that has ground beef or some individuals like ground pork, maybe I would use ground turkey instead. Right. So I guess to put it in an example of a meal, say for instance, I want to make hamburgers. And for the hamburgers, instead of using, I don't know, let's say 70%, 30%, 70, 30 ground beef, right? So 70 lean, 30% fat ground beef. Instead of using that type of meat for a burger, maybe I switch to an alternative, maybe like 90-10, or maybe I can switch the meat entirely to turkey, ground turkey. That is going to lower the calories so much. And again, calories in, calories out, that is how you're going to achieve a lot of these goals. And if you have questions on how to actually calculate that, I talked about that in a previous video, so definitely go check that out. But again, it's going to be calories in the end. And by you making these little adjustments like in that meal, right? So maybe you swap out the meat for a hamburger, or for the hamburger, and maybe you swap out the buns as well. There are lower calorie option buns in your supermarkets. Most likely there's a ton of options out there. I feel like nowadays, especially, there are a lot of 0 calorie, or there are a lot of lower carb or lower in something options for a lot of the foods that you like to eat. Like I said, hamburger buns is an example. I have seen lower carb hamburger buns at the supermarket. So that is something that you could try as well, right? So you make these little substitutes in the things that you already like, and over time that adds up a lot, and you won't even really notice the difference in a lot of these things. And who knows, you might even find a recipe that you like even more than the previous iteration that you had. So like I said, I just use the example of hamburgers, right? And you can, when on the topic of hamburgers, you can do the same thing with like ketchup. So you can swap out the ketchup, then the ketchup that you usually get, the regular one, for like 0 calorie ketchup. So making these little options is what I'm trying to get at. So making these little switches over time, these are going to add up. And when I started doing that, the weight, like to drop it, was such an easier process. Such an easier process. And you can even do the same things with the beverages that you drink as well. Beverages are another one. So, a lot of people, and this is kind of going to another topic, but I feel like it's a good topic to segue to. A lot of people might tell you, especially if you're trying to be, healthy, or kind of eliminate the calories that you're drinking from beverages. A lot of people like sodas. A lot of people like juices. And for me, those are things that I still really much enjoy. It's very hard for me just to go to an only water diet. I still drink a ton of water throughout the day, but I like to have other beverages here and there as well. And so if you just are going to restrict yourself to just have water and that's it, for some people that might work, but for others that might not. And for those people that it might not work, that's still okay. You can find alternatives to those options that you're looking for. So one of those options is like diet sodas. If you still want to have diet sodas um, in the meals that you're having, or if you still want to have sodas in the meals that you're having, you can swap those out with diet sodas. So again, these are just swaps. If you want to go, and I know they have like 0 sugar juices nowadays as well, these are things that you can also swap. So the biggest thing, I guess, with, because there's a ton of examples that you can go through with the different swaps that you can make, but the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway from this is, especially to those individuals that are looking to lose a little bit of weight or some weight, the easiest way, in my opinion, to go about this is just taking the diets that you already, or taking the foods or the diets that you already really love. Um, and you just make substitutions. You just swap out some of the ingredients to healthier choices. So it makes it seem like you're not even in a diet. You won't even notice it a lot of the times. And the same, I guess, fundamental message could still be applied to individuals looking to gain weight. If you're looking to gain weight, the process shouldn't be difficult for you. You shouldn't be feeling stuffed, or, like when you're wanting to throw up all the time. Try to see if you can make small substitutes like that to still eat the same volume of food that you were doing before, but just making them higher in calorie. So maybe you can add in like a little bit of peanut butter into some of your meals. Peanut butter is very calorically dense, so you won't even really notice that you're having it, right? So again, even though I talked in the context of losing weight, the same message and fundamental kind of idea can be applied to anything. Making substitutions to the foods, again, that you already really love is going to be, in my opinion, the easiest way to go about this. So, along that note, and I guess the last thing to talk about, now that we're kind of reaching the end, because I know there is some controversy about it, and so definitely just want to kind of share my opinions about it. You've noticed that I've talked about 0 calorie options or diet sodas. There is, I feel like, a lot of, probably just because of what I've seen online, but there's a decent amount of people online that might tell you that, these options aren't healthy at all. You should stay away from them because of XY reasons. From what I've seen, and you're obviously welcome to do your own research or even stay away from these if you like. From what I've seen, from what I've researched, there has been no findings that a lot of these things will do you any harm. If they're going to be helping me achieve the goals that I have, then I'm all for it. Again, because there hasn't been any sort of study or anything telling me that there is some sort of harm that's going to be done to my body. If I eat these things in moderation, that is going to be the key thing. Like anything, you have to consume these things obviously in moderation. If I drink 1,000 diet sodas a day, I'm sure I'm gonna have some issues, right? So in moderation, I have yet to see any sort of significant issues with a lot of these diet or lower calorie options. And so because of that, I say go for it. If you are okay with consuming those and eating those, they're going to be helping you reach your goals, so go for it. Again, there hasn't been any set of studies that have been saying these are going to give you harm if you consume them in moderation. So if they're going to aid you and help you in the process and make this a lot more easier for you, then go for it. What a lot of people also, I feel like, don't understand is, there's a lot of people out there, and I can only speak, I guess, for the people that are overweight because I was there at one point. Um, when you're overweight or you have a lot of body fat on you, that alone is causing you a lot of health issues, or you're risking some potential health issues if you stay that way for a long period of time, right? So you want to get yourself out of that state as soon as possible. That isn't healthy for you to do, right? So you obviously have to find some tools to kind of get you into that healthier state. And again, if diet sodas are going to help me there, then so be it. Again, if it's not going to give me any harm, then why not? But obviously, like I said, do your own research if you like on this stuff. There's a ton of lower calorie diet options out there. So you make the call if that is something that you want to do. But like I said, for me, those things helped tremendously because anytime I had any sort of craving or I wanted something that was a bit high in calories, I could just eat some of those things instead, and it was still helping me reach my goals. And I've never felt better than ever. So for me, even up to this day, some of those things I still eat on a daily basis. So that's another thing, right? When it comes to those substitutions, like I talked about, you might find that there's some 0 calorie or diet options for some of these things that you're looking to substitute. So definitely check those out if you're interested in that, because again, it makes the process so much easier. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it off that then, or leave it at that. Hopefully, you did take something away from this. Again, I kind of want to make these be a bit more like chill talks so you can kind of have these. You can listen to this to the side or something of that sort. I might even kind of do like a podcast in the future because I feel like this type of format is it's very easy for me, and I just like doing it this way, right? To kind of talk one to one with some people or make it feel like that, right? So hopefully you're able to get something out of this. And again, even if you're trying to gain weight or if it's a different goal that you have that's a bit different than mine, um, again, the same fundamental kind of topics here still apply, right? You just have to find out what works best for you, but making substitutions to foods and the diet that you were already used to, um, in my opinion, that's going to be the best way to go. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I will catch you for the next one. Peace.